Okay, Heath, Chris Godwin is a buy low for you. He was only started in 7% of leagues, which was a good call. 3 catches for 26 yards, but he did have 10 targets against Philadelphia. Godwin and Jaylen Waddle for you.
Yeah, 146 air yards in his debut for Chris Godwin. Very happy with how involved he was. We talk about it sometimes when we have guys coming back that we don't want to start them that first week back. We call it the shake the rust off game. Chris Godwin had a little bit of rust last week. Hopefully he got it all shaken off, but it may take another week. I still think that there's a very good chance that when Mike Evans is back, it's going to be a condensed passing offense. I think Godwin could still lead this team in targets and maybe be the most reliable in full PPR. He got back a little earlier than we expected. He was more involved in the first game back. I would be looking to trade running backs that people are excited about that we're not necessarily sure are going to be full-time running backs rest of season. I think like maybe you can see what type of wide receiver you have to put with Bashal Tootin, who people refuse to give up on. I would say Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, see if you could give him up for Chris Godwin. I don't really want to give Travion Henderson up, but that's somebody that's kind of in the same range.
A couple things on Godwin. So really, I think the Bucs in general, right? They are typically a pretty run-heavy team. They were chasing points against the Eagles. Godwin had a 29% slot rate last week. That's not good for him, right? I mean, the 1 year that he had recently where he was really bad, a couple of years removed from the ACL, he had a pretty low slot rate. We want him to be closer to 60. Typically, I mean, that's just kind of been the case. And then Evans is coming back. I assume when Evans comes back, Godwin will pop back into the slot, which is good. But Evans is going to be back, which is bad. So I just don't know how to approach, because Dave's going to talk about Emeka Egbuka as a sell high. I don't know what this receiving core looks like. And if we're buying low on Godwin, is that going to be just kind of a fooled you once Evan comes back? The broader question is, how do you think of the Bucs wide receivers going forward? Heath, I'll let you start.
I think you can't have anyone at the top of the Bucs wide receivers right now except for Emeka Egbuka based on what he's done. But he's played a game without either one of these guys, and 2 games without Godwin, and 1 game with a partial Godwin, and he's at 7.5 targets per game. I think there's a chance in full PPR Godwin's the best one rest of season. I'm afraid Evans will be the worst rest of season.
Okay.
We also don't know when Evans is coming back, and what we've seen so far, whether that continues or not, because of how well Egbuka and or Godwin are playing by the time Evans is back. He has seen everybody's best corner.
Who has seen? Oh,
Evans.
Yeah.
And so is that still the way you play Tampa? Is take Mike Evans away, who will be a gimpy Mike Evans at first, or a rusty Mike Evans at first. I'll phrase it that way: rusty Mike Evans at first, coming back from an injury. And look, you say they're a run heavy team. They may not have the running back. We don't know.
That's true. Although he's actually been one of the worst rushers in football so far in terms of metrics, because I was looking at Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey's been horrible, right? I mean, 3.3 yards per carry, I think. His longest run is 16 yards. Bucky Irving's been basically just as bad as a rusher. It's kind of weird.
And they're really, I think run heavy is probably the wrong word to use. They're a neutral team.
I mean, they weren't going into, are they? I thought they were 20.
For the year, they're 16th in rush rate. Okay,
I think going into the game, they were in the 20s in pass rate, but okay. So fair enough. Jaylen Waddle, Tyreek Hill was giving us about, I think 2 straight games, about 16 points PPR. He was kind of on his way to something like that. Who knows? What do you think about Waddle? I'll give you that number, 16 points per game. You think Waddle gets there rest of season?
Well, he's had 12 games since the start of 2023 where he's had at least 7 targets, and he's averaged 17 fantasy points per game in those 12 games. I don't think that 16 is quite a fair expectation. Maybe 15 would be a better one, but 16, 17 is definitely possible. I would rather have Jaylen Waddle than any Bucs wide receiver rest of season.
Okay.
Do you think you could buy him low though now?
I think that they're what he's done so far this year and what he didn't do in the game after Tyreek Hill left. You're probably not going to be able to buy low on Jaylen Waddle in one of our leagues. Maybe, but probably not. But I think in a lot of leagues, yes. A guy that's done so little is going to be and had some disappointments in the last year.
Do you view him as a top 24 receiver rest of season?
Yes, I think he's closer to top 18 than top 24.
Yeah, so I was actually going to start narrowing it down, and I was going to actually ask you.
I think 18. I'd say he's top 18, but he's towards the bottom of that.
I've got him as receiver 20 rest of season. And I feel like people understand that without Tyreek Hill there, he's got a great opportunity to haul in a bunch of targets. I think the offense is a lot different than where it was last year. I don't think they're going to completely revert back to what they did in 2024. And his track record has always been kind of crummy when everybody's healthy, but when somebody's missing, he steps up. The flip side is that everybody has a strong opinion on Jaylen Waddle not being able to stay healthy, and that's going to live in people's minds as they move forward with him. So he's not somebody that I think you should give up a lot for in trade, but still a decent amount. But where is he on the trade chart? He's right in the same range for me, a little bit behind Michael Pittman. He's definitely behind Xavier Worthy, Quentin Johnston. He's ahead of McLaurin. If you can't wait for Terry McLaurin, you're not sure what's going on with McLaurin, maybe you can give McLaurin and a little bit more to get Jaylen Waddle.
So you have Ibuka as a sell high.
I do.
Would you rather have Waddle or Ibuka?
I think I can get a lot more for Ibuka right now.
But would you rather have Ibuka or Waddle?
I'd still rather have Ibuka, but it's kind of close.
I think you can get Waddle plus for Ibuka, and I would love that deal.
That I would agree with.
Waddle has Tyreek going into week 4, averaging 7.7 targets per game. Waddle in his career, 18 games with at least 8 targets. In those 18 games, he's averaging, it's 26 games in his career with 8+ targets, if I have it correctly. He's averaging 18.9 PPR points per game when he gets 8+ targets.
Dave's buy lows. He's got 4 of them. CeeDee Lamb, who averaged over 100 yards per game in his 2 healthy games, and Rashee Rice.
Those 2 are kind of obvious. I don't think we have to dig into them.
All right, so then A.J. Brown, I want to believe in this. He's got 8 or more targets in 3 straight games, and he's only turned one of those games into anything. But they have the fewest pass attempts in football again. Is that going to change? I don't know. The only game that he's been good, and the only game that Devontae Smith really has been good, is the one game where they were chasing points, and they're obviously an amazing team. So what are you thinking about A.J. Brown?
It's the exact same thing as Jamar Chase. You don't want to overpay for A.J. Brown, but I can't help but think that eventually the Eagles are going to let Jalen Hurts throw it a little bit more. It's been an inefficient start rushing-wise for Saquon Barkley and the offensive line. Lane Johnson's now banged up. I don't think that that's good for anything in Philadelphia, whether it's rushing or passing, but we did see this Eagles team throw well 2 weeks ago without Lane Johnson on the field, so I think that they can operate just fine passing down the way. And we know that A.J. Brown wants the ball, and he's been commanding good target volume. He's usually been very efficient, even on 7 or 8 targets per game. I think people who are frustrated with A.J. Brown in their fantasy leagues are easy marks to go and get.
Early game of the week, yeah!
You just decided this.
Eagles and the Broncos. Gonna be a good one in Philly. And it's the game of the week. Hey!
Now, let me add one last thing.
Okay.
You might want to wait a week to acquire A.J. Brown. Like after everything I said, because this is Denver, and they do have good corners, and Patrick Surtain is starting to play better than he did earlier in the year.
I just hate their offense.
I get it, but I love the talent of their players, and I think that they're going to have to start throwing a little more.
Jalen Hurts has the second best off-target throw rate.
I know.
And he's averaging a career worst 6 yards per attempt, career low intended air yards per attempt, career low yak per completion. Like the design's awful.
Yeah. It might be. Yeah, it's frustrating. I've kind of he's going to sink some of my teams, A.J. Brown. But if he keeps getting 8 to 10 targets,
I don't think he will.
You don't think he'll sink my teams? Or you don't think
I don't think he'll sink your. I think other reasons will sink your teams. But for people of A.J. Brown, I think they ride it out.
Obviously, football is unpredictable. So I had a thought. My podcast league, I lost James Conner and Tyreek Hill in consecutive weeks, and hanging on by a thread there. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you just take these leaps of faith and you try to get Brian Thomas Jr., you try to get A.J. Brown, you try to get Ladd McConkey, you try to get Derrick Henry, all these players who maybe we have good reasons to doubt them, but also, they're so established and they're so good. McConkey isn't, but maybe you just take, or neither is Thomas, I guess. But you know what I'm trying to say. Maybe you just go for it. If you're looking at your team, it's like, I can't win with this lineup anymore.
Let me ask you this question, because you have a lot of, and kudos to you, of Quentin Johnston. Are you turning Quentin Johnston at this point into any of those guys you just mentioned?
I would. Okay. Henry, I actually offered him for Derrick Henry and I got rejected.
As you should.
I would not trade him for McConkey. I don't think that makes sense.
No.
And I don't think I'd trade him for Brian Thomas Jr.
No. Would you trade him for
AJ Brown,
Jamar Chase, or AJ Brown?
Chase for sure. AJ Brown, I don't know. I think no. You just have so many more pass attempts for
and this, I'm not criticizing you, but like that's the type of player that you're supposed to turn into those guys, right? The guys that come out of nowhere that you drafted with minimal capital and may have staying power. I mean, Quentin Johnston looks awesome. May have staying power, but if McConkey starts to get going, Hampton continues to do this, like there are a lot of ways that this could fall apart for Quentin Johnston, and AJ Brown could still be, like you said, take the leap of faith, can become AJ Brown, can Derrick Henry turn things around, all those things that all the players you just listed. So like that's the perfect example of what you're trying to accomplish in getting these stars. So again, and it's not just Quentin Johnston, it's Ibuka, it's Pickens, it's anybody that you could see potentially falling apart because other things coming back or happening to those players, like Ibuka with Evans and Godwin and obviously Pickens with CeeDee Lamb. So like if you're not going to do it with that type of player, then you're probably not going to risk it for other players as well, because you have to give something in return. Like it's easy for us to say, hey, go trade for Jamar Chase and AJ Brown. You got to give something, and you're saying like in your podcast, like you're hanging by a thread. Well, you don't have a lot of obviously assets to give if you're not going to give your best asset to acquire somebody that maybe long-term is better.
No, right. So I think that's where you draw the difference. Obviously I could be wrong about this, but I see Jamar Chase as a better asset than AJ Brown and Brian Thomas Jr. at this point. So I would try to turn Quentin Johnston into Jamar Chase, but I wouldn't do it for the other guys because I need Quentin Johnston.
Let me ask you a question, and I know the other side of it is a zero, but do you have any regret after 1 week of trading CeeDee Lamb for Brian Thomas Jr.?
Should have traded him for Quentin Johnston.
And I would trade Quentin Johnston for CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
If I could.
Everybody would. Yeah,
because we're a week closer to Lamb returning. He has been put on IR. I'm looking at the most traded list. Like, who would I trade for Jamar Chase or for AJ? Who would I trade for AJ Brown? Because Chase, I think people will be easier to buy into. Would you trade Zay Flowers for AJ Brown?
In a minute.
Yes. Well, what do you mean? Meaning we're getting AJ Brown?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I crazy to think Cooper Rush is actually going to be good for him?
I think they changed the offense and just shorten routes a lot more. So I think volume will still be there for Zay Flowers. I don't know how many breakaway plays he'll have.
Would you trade Ken Walker for AJ Brown?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Ken Walker's probably a sell high too.
If you can. Right.
We haven't gotten any sell highs, so let's get to that. Derrick Henry was the last guy on your buy low list.
I think the Ravens also try and go back to him a little bit more. They've gotten away from him for obvious reasons the last two games, but I feel like they got away from him sooner than they needed to in their games. He's got to be the catalyst of their offense now. Their offensive line, they're missing their left tackle, but the rest of that line, I think, is still in decent enough shape. And so they can try and slow down games, try not to have Cooper Rush throw it 35 times, and lean into Derrick Henry as the genesis of their offense, or whatever fancy term you want to use. And so people are frustrated with Derrick Henry. I've got him on a team in a league that I'm 2-2 in. There's no way I'm giving him up for Quentin Johnston at this point. I'd rather ride it out with Derrick Henry.
I would almost put him on a sell high list more so than a buy low list, because I think his name still carries weight. And so if you can turn him into AJ Brown or Jamar Chase or one of those guys.
Oh, you trade
straight up
Henry for AJ Brown.
If I needed receiver help, so I lost neighbors, or Derrick Henry might be toast at this point. Like,
whoa,
the way the offense is operating and the way that the games are going to go for them. Like, if Lamar Jackson's out for 3 weeks, so let's just say it's 2 weeks by and another week, like that could be awful for him.
there's still a whole half a season left after that. And
I agree.
you're probably underestimating him because he still has, which you've seen pretty much every game, breakaway run potential, but he has 3 straight games with 12 or fewer carries. I feel like they're going to fix that.
That's the problem.
But what's the problem? The game.
Okay, so the Texans game clearly is going to be not a game where the Texans blow them out,
right?
Unless they just take advantage of that paper defense that's facing them. But hard to expect that with that offense. But it just doesn't feel like they're going to have a lot of favorable game scripts, and we've seen this from Derrick Henry, end of his Titans tenure, few games last year, and certainly now this year. When they are behind, he is essentially irrelevant. Now, granted, last week's game, he wasn't terrible because he had the one run.
I mean, he was pretty bad. I mean, only had
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, excuse me.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. No, even then he scored 10. He scored 10.7 or fewer PPR fantasy points with a touchdown that week 2 weeks ago. In 3 straight games, he's been below 11 PPR fantasy points. So I get it. Last year, 6 losses. Derrick Henry averaged 13.5 PPR fantasy points per game. Not good. He averaged 15.
You could still get a king's ransom for him.
Right. I don't disagree about the name value or what you can get in return for him. I would want more than just AJ Brown in exchange.